Hi, Misha here, and last time we were in the jungle with a Dutch mercenary. This time we're going to the city, and we're going to go against an LAPD lieutenant. Yeah, it's time to rejoin the Predators, talking in depth about Mr. City Hunter, aka the Psycho Vigilante, aka Ghost, aka, and maybe most fittingly, Demon. From Predator 2, 1990, a film that I enjoyed when it came out, even if that was a bit of an unpopular opinion, but it's kind of funny after AVP and especially AVP Requiem. People have reevaluated P2 and it looks a lot better in hindsight, but I thought it was cool. I thought it was a different take and it had a lot more gadgets. They didn't just try to do the same as P1. That would have been easy. Yeah, like a lot of us, I wish we would have had Arnold back, but 1990 was a busy year for him. I get it. And Danny Glover did a really good job as Lieutenant Harrigan. So I think it was enough of a departure to keep it interesting, but also it definitely paid homage and tribute to the original. It hit the right chord. Plus, hey, it had Gary Busey in it. Which, by the way, I did not realize that Gary Busey was blonde haired. I don't know why, but I always kind of pictured him as like dark brown hair. But yeah, Gary Busey. Let's dive in. Speaking of psychos. On to the spinny thing. I actually picked up some cheap little peg stands on Amazon. They were about $1 a piece. They're good, but the pegs can break. So make sure your figures are reasonably well balanced, and what I found is really important, make sure the shelf they're on isn't kind of angled, because over time the joints will kind of wiggle wobble. But if everything's pretty even, it's fine. And if the peg breaks, oh well, they're $1. Here he is. This is the Ultimate City Hunter from NECA. And we'll go over his weapons and whatnot. But first, of course, he's a Yuja, and he came to Earth after monitoring the biohelmet, the biomask, as I really prefer, because it's not really a helmet, it's more of a mask, recordings from the original Jungle Hunter. He thought that Dutch guy was pretty cool. Yeah, Yachas are a little strange, but hey, they're Sport Hunter. What do you expect? So, he's also the one that kind of started off the AVP thing, because the P2 film was already in production before the first AVP comic came out. And the reason I say that, in his trophy room on his ship, we see an alien skull. Now, originally it was just there as an Easter egg, kind of a throwaway gag. There wasn't really a wider universe. Keep in mind, there were only 2 films in each series at that point. But that kind of led to the lore that young bloods would get blooded when they killed their first alien, their first xenomorph, and that was his. And then after they did this, they were allowed to go on their first hunt. They were allowed to go solo and also kind of pick the planet. Well, seeing this new fangled place, Earth, which is kind of way out in the boondocks, he wanted to go there. So his tribe, one might call it a lost tribe or clan, yes, we'll get there, took him there and, kind of set him about for his first hunt. He's relatively young and relatively inexperienced predator, but he also came with a lot more equipment than Jungle Hunter. In the real world, it's just because, they developed more for the film and they had more of a budget for that. In universe, you might say he was more up to date with the new fancier tech. But we'll kind of get into all that. So he went to Earth, and this would take place July 1997, so a little bit in the future. And in the universe, there was a heat wave, because that's what predators like. I mean, they're pretty much walking around in mesh suits. So, yeah, they like the heat. And there was a gang war taking place in LA. Whew, thank God that never happens. And no turbulence in California, right? So he plunks himself down, kind of in this 3-way war with the Colombians, the Jamaicans, and the LAPD kind of mashed in the middle. And that's thought it would be a good hunting ground. Unfortunately, his first little hunt, he didn't go so great. At least, that's what he thought. Let's get him in hand so I can talk more about his weapons. Like the newer NECAs, he has 30 points of articulation. And something that everyone knows, that when you get these, they're often stiff out of the package. Kind of depending. What it is the paint. If they were to paint individual pieces and then put them together, the lines wouldn't match up and everything, so they put them together and they paint them. But unfortunately, that means the joints get a little stuck. Plus, the kind of plastic or PVC they use is kind of a coarser material, which gives a nice texture, but does mean they're not the most fluid joints. And you can try to manipulate them, and they might break free, or they might just kind of break off. Now, a lot of people like using hot water. I'm not keen for that. For one, I don't know if there's any metal in here, but if there is, it could rust up. I remember as a kid trying to play with Star Wars and whatnot in the bathtub, and water does weird things to plastic, even if no metal is involved. So you do need to heat them up, at least to be safe. I prefer this instead. Yeah, I stole my wife's little hairdryer. The Predator likes it in pink. What can you say? But yeah, I've found it doesn't take a whole lot. Don't overheat. Kind of go slow and steady. Because if you overheat, things get really loosey-goosey and joints might not hold. I've also found that after you heat, like especially the legs, straighten them out, move them, and then lay it on its back to let them cool. Because if you try to do it standing up, again, the joints might kind of whoop over a little bit. So, your mileage may vary, but that's just kind of what I've discovered. And once you do that and manipulate a few times, you will break a little paint off, but they will move better. So, anywho, back to the in-universe. His first attack was on the Colombian Scorpion cartel gang, and he played with his toys, but he just didn't find it too terribly fun. There wasn't a lot of challenge. In fact, he only really took one little trophy, just a skull, not even a full trophy. Just it wasn't really doing it for him. But this would lead him to first encounter Mike Harrigan, Danny Glover's character, and he intrigued him at this point. So he has the same kind of claws as the Jungle Hunter on the right gauntlet. And with the figure, they do kind of come in and out. It would be nice maybe if there was a lever, but then it would be maybe unsightly. Just when you move these, be careful. I've kind of found this little notch back here. Just applying even pressure. They're reasonably durable until they're not. It's like you can push on them for a while, and then all of a sudden they'll just fall. So just be careful there. I left his hand in that shape for his disc, smart disc. We'll talk about that in a minute. I just thought it was kind of a nice way to put it in there. Like the Jungle again, he had a plasma caster, although it is on a moving track and spins around. It's kind of a different, somewhat sleeker shape, and it doesn't have the backpack. It does have this here, which is actually his Medicomp. Jungle Hunter had a similar version too, but different. And we have this, his combi stick. Now, this is the collapsed version. But we, of course, do get a extended version here that is basically as tall as the 8-inch Predator. Now, I guess NECA could have done a thing where you had this and you could peg in the ends or swap out the ends, but I'm actually glad they gave us two pieces. And to be fair, in the film, they actually had to have two types of prop too, because they discovered that in reality, this whole quadruple telescoping thing couldn't really be accomplished. So they had one prop that would do the initial out, and then another prop that would do the out. In universe, this is an interesting weapon because it was kind of originally slated for Predator 1. At least there was to be a collapsing telescoping spear for Predator 1, but it was cut. Although I think you can briefly see it in its collapsed form in one scene. So maybe there was technically a somewhat of a prop, but it never really featured. In universe, this was given to a Predator upon his essential graduation to young blood, from Predator School, before he goes on his first Xeno hunt. And they are highly personal, highly customizable. And I actually don't know if I grab the right exact combi stick for City Hunter, because I just kind of keep all mine in a box, because they're reasonably stiff, but unfortunately this end is really thin, so on a shelf, if there's ever a fall, which there always will be, it'll snap. They fit in the hands really well, though. So it's a personal weapon that a Predator pretty much has once he gets out of adolescence and into young adulthood, and it's pretty much on his first hunt. They can paint them, customize them, even put trophies on them, and there are several different types. This is kind of the original type. Fun fact, the prop from P2 was actually stolen. Actually, a lot of things are stolen after the film, so that's why when you get to AVP and stuff, they look different. In the show, he either uses it as a spear or as a throwing weapon, a javelin type thing, because even though it's metal, it's actually very lightweight, very sharp, pretty advanced tech, even though it's kind of a tribal thing. So they can either use it as a melee weapon for repairing things or longer range attacks, or they can toss it at you and stab the shit out of you. It also seems to have interchangeable, removable, replaceable tips. Now, he also had a spear gun, but this figure doesn't come with it. But I do have a spear gun we'll look at with another figure. What he does have, though, is this thing down here on his ankle, and that actually explains why he has this kind of odd hand. He comes with 5 hands total. This is his net launcher. See, it fits on his hand, kind of like a gauntlet or glove. It does have a peg in the bottom, maybe a little unsightly, but it really pegs in well to his leg. I wasn't sure being that low if it would fall off, but no, it sticks on real good. So just one of those compromises, and you can always kind of turn his hand away, and it fits on his hand, this one made for it, quite well. Interesting fact, the NECA hands are kind of more of a soft, pliable material these days, but this hand reverts back to the hard plastic from like the AVP line, which makes sense considering it needs to kind of lock in securely. There's a little thing for his thumb to slide in. This is pretty unique to this figure, this one accessory. I'm sure someone else has it in the whole line. There's hundreds of these, but he's the only one I have that comes with it, and he kind of made this famous. The genesis for the net gun, net launcher, started off with Predator 1. They were going to do kind of a net trap. Now, in P1, it was to be like a contracting metal trap, and that's what this would fire, but it wasn't to be handheld. So it wasn't really going to be in P1, but the inspiration kind of came from that. And this would fire a metal net in like a little bundle. It has like a little cartridge you load into it. It is a single shot weapon. There is a variant that's a 3-shot, but that's not what City Hunter had. He had the single shot version. So the net comes out at high velocity as a bundled web, and when it gets to the target, it spreads out, impacts it, and covers it, usually hitting it with pretty good force and pinning it to a wall or just netting around itself. The net's kind of made of a smart metal that's generally impervious to cutting, except through like acid from an alien or maybe other Predator weapons like a smart disc, but like a steel knife from a human's probably not going to cut through it. And on top of that, the wiring is razor sharp to kind of immobilize the target. And on top of that, it usually retracts in, squishes in. Now, some don't, so maybe it's an option. But old City Hunter, he liked his to retract in, and we see him using that quite a bit. After his disappointing hunt for the Colombians, the next night, he went for their rivals in LA, the Jamaican Voodoo Posse. And there, he would actually find a somewhat more worthy rival. Now he gets a worthy trophy, so he takes the skull and spinal column from King Willie, the leader of the Voodoo Posse. The reason is, for one thing, King Willie was brave enough. He actually faced him with a bladed weapon, a rapier-type sword, and so the Predator obliged, fighting him with a blade. Now, he seemed to really prefer blade over energy weapons. He has his plasma caster, but he likes the more bladed, although, of course, the smart disc is used. But yeah, Willie kind of labeled him the demon, although thinking he was more of a supernatural thing than an alien thing. But he got the idea right of he's not from this world. So from there, he got his first good trophy, but he still had his eye on Mike Harrigan. Unfortunately, he's getting a little overconfident and also overexcited because he's leaving evidence behind at both scenes for Harrigan and others to find. One other weapon I wanted to show that this comes with, notice this little pop-out thing on his wrist here. He has a very similar gauntlet computer to the Jungle Hunter, although interestingly it actually flips the opposite direction, kind of inwards. I'm not really sure why. I guess just to be different. It's more of a thinner computer, looks more modern, and it doesn't have the hose running up, which is good. It gives you better articulation for this arm. But as part of that gauntlet, there's a little pop-out plasma blaster. It's usually called an energy flechette. Now, this doesn't pop out of the figure. It's actually two pieces. You've got the folded in version, and then you can plug in with the little peg the popped out version. This is more of a backup weapon for Predators. It's energy based, but it doesn't use the targeting system in the biomask. It's just, hey, point your arm at it, close range. And most sources claim it's a single shot, at very least semi-auto with energy recharge. It seems to be part of the gauntlet, using the gauntlet's computer and energy power systems, so it's probably dependent on how much energy's in here. But it's a little backup gun that we see him use. Again, just pops out. I don't like leaving it out because if he were to fall or something, that could snap in the peg. It works well, but it is a protruding thing, and that makes me nervous, so I usually just leave it collapsed in, which is generally speaking how he looks. But it is neat that this comes with the figure. So yeah, he's a pretty well armed up dude. Again, his collapsed combi stick pops in. It actually fits loose, but it doesn't typically fall out. And there's lots of little gribbly gooblies you can kind of plug it into, and unless you're just really knocking it around, it's going to stay there. So I really like this. Of course, he's got the Predator sensory dreads. Not much in the way of armor. Bare feet, which I still find Predator toes hilarious. And while he has a different biomask than Jungle Hunter, it essentially provides the same elements, although it might have some updated tech. So that gets us to our third major encounter. Because, you know, everyone's got to eat. And, well, he's not a vegetarian. No, he had staked at him a nice little steakhouse. Well, it was a slaughterhouse, but, you know, raw meat. Hey, I like rare steak too, so no shade. So a trap was laid for him at his feeding ground, which he would go to every few days. And they thought they could catch him and study him. Kind of that same line from Aliens of, oh, look, there's a super dangerous alien. Should we kill it? Nah, let's study it, because what could go wrong? I just keep my accessories in a bag. He mainly just has his other three hands and his unmasked head in here and the pieces you've seen. Some people might cringe. I'm sure there's some people that say don't put it in a Ziploc bag, do this or that, but I mean, sure, whatever. I just don't want to lose them or have them get damaged. I actually keep them in kind of an arts and crafts box with dividers, so they are in a hard shell. So here he is back on the stand for a minute, because we're going to get to the slaughterhouse battle. There, Harrigan meets Gary Busey's character, Peter Keyes. Keyes, formerly CIA, heads the ALF team. Okay, and I know it's OTF, WLF, but in my head, it'll always be ALF. I think Alf. Hey, he had to do something after he left Willie's house, right? Anyway, otherworld life form. Basically, they knew about Dutch. They knew about this. They kind of give a little bit of a synopsis of Predator, kind of a info dump to Harrigan, which helps the audience and Harrigan. And they think they're going to catch him. And they realize that, after Dutch going in the mud, heat vision, yada yada. So they wear suits, cooling suits that hide their heat vision. This is where we learn a few things. For one, at least City Hunter's biomask has multiple vision types. We see him switching through it. Well, you guys see. I don't. I'm blind. Maybe I should have a biomask. Would that help me? I don't know. So instead of worrying about heat, he tries infrared or whatever light source, and he finds them by their lights. Something Harrigan cottons onto, but a little too late to save the team, which he slaughters. This is where you see him using his smart disc, the one holstered on his right hip there. This is a cool weapon, and it was invented all new by Stan Winston for Predator 2. Wasn't kind of a realization of something from Predator 1. It is a razor-sharp disc that can be thrown like a frisbee, but comes back like a boomerang. It's actually electronic. It uses gyro stabilizers to go in flight, and it's linked to the computer on his wrist. It can be programmed with multiple targets, and it can either seek them out using heat, thermal, or the laser system in the mask. Kind of whoop around, getting 2 or 3 guys coming back, cutting them in two. And if it, say, sticks in a wall or something, assuming someone else doesn't get to it first, hint, the Predator can push a button on his gauntlet and it'll just return home. Like E.T., only a lot sharper and less drunk. So it's something he uses quite a bit along with his combi stick to pretty much just slaughter the team. Again, he seems to be more of an edge weapon. So we see him using the plasma caster a little bit. But before long, he gets the team and whatnot killed. So it's basically down to Peter Keyes and Mike Harrigan. Although, to be fair, the Predator's taking some damage too. And one of the first things he loses is his plasma caster. And he will soon lose other things, including his combi stick. Now we move into the second City Hunter from NECA. When they did the original Ultimate City Hunter, that was around the same time as the Jungle. Then they decided to revisit the Lost Tribe, making them as Ultimates. And since he was the most seen on screen member, even if he was the youngest, they felt like they had to do him in the series. So, already having done the original, they did this battle damaged version. A little ironic, this is my second one. My first one came in damaged. Specifically, the claws were whoppidoo. They were bent out of shape. So it's a little underwhelming maybe to some, but I kind of wanted it for a couple of features, including this breathing mask he has. So in the slaughterhouse, he does kill the team using his various weapons, but he does lose several, including his combi stick. So we want to go ahead and pluck this off the back here. The toy does come with it, but he doesn't get one. He loses it. And it comes down to Keyes and Harrigan and him. And he does eventually kill Keyes with his smart disc. And he comes with the closed spinny version. He also comes with the split open version, which is basically to be used as a hand axe. Same thing, just, extends out a bit. He does come with a hand that can specifically hold it. You thread the fingers through. I could do that, but yeah, I think I spent enough time. You get the idea, and I don't like to display him with it. And so that's what he kills Keyes with, meaning it's down to him and Harrigan. Harrigan is shooting him with a shotgun, which is where he gets the blood damage on his chest, pellets. Now, they have very thick hide, so while it does damage, it's not inconceivable that it wouldn't just completely kill him. And then, of course, Harrigan unmasks him. And this is a neat piece that this one does come with an actual biomask with internal detailing. In the show, in the movie, Stan Winston, they had a lot more time to design the figure, the costume. So unlike kind of one single piece with just a couple of removable components, all the armor bits and everything for City Hunter were separate, higher quality. They also wanted to give it more of a darker urban look, so more bronze material, also a little bit sleeker, more insectile. Basically, they just had more time. So here's our mask. Now, Harrigan actually is the one to unmask Mr. Predator. Here's the alternative head that comes with the damaged one. So, unlike with Predator 1, where Jungle removes his mask, Harrigan pulls it off in kind of the famous scene of "You're one ugly," and then the Predator finishes, "Motherfucker." Along with "shit happens," kind of famous quotes. It also is kind of what gives a rise to the idea that City Hunter was aware of Jungle Hunter's antics and adventures, because Dutch says that to him. So yeah, he goes for a minute unmasked. Well, so where does this breathing mask, emergency mask, come from? Well, that's kind of getting to this Medicomp in the back here. Now, the original Predator, he had a Medicomp or Medikit. It was a different style, and it was more simplistic. It had clamps and sutures and surgical scissors and some shots and adrenaline or whatever predators use. Drugs. He had meth, okay? He took meth to the jungle. Well, the City Hunter has a more advanced kit, or at least maybe more complete. It has pretty much all that the original Predator did. It has an interesting thing that's a burner where he can put ingredients in and heat them up, inject chemicals, and make things from it. It also has 3 or 4 different shots, again, drugs, as well as more surgical tools for removing things like little tiny pellets from your chest. So he actually pulls this mask out of the kit to breathe. Now, a lot of speculation online, because we know that that predators breathe Earth atmosphere okay, at least for a short time. But he's a hurt predator at this point. So is it oxygen? Is it some other chemical? Or is it just like a stimulant to keep him going? Well, why does he need it? Well, that's because in the fight with Harrigan, the other feature of this figure kind of comes into play. So they're fighting back and forth. He loses his plasma caster, which is represented on this figure. Well, rather not. So after losing his combi stick, he's pretty much down to the blades on his wrist and his smart disc, and he's tossing it around. But it gets stuck in a wall. So they're fighting. He also does destroy Harrigan's shotgun. They work their way up to the roof. It's a pretty good fight, which is exactly what Mr. Predator wanted. But he gets to the edge, and he's damaged, and he's knocked off hanging by one arm, and he reaches over to do the Predator explosion. Again, and this actually works well, because now we know Harrigan knows what happens when they reach for this computer on their wrist. He saw the footage from Dutch and was filled in by keys. So he's hanging there, reaching for his computer to do the honorable Yautja thing, exploding. And we do know that even though he's young and impetuous and even reckless, he's still honorable. For example, a kid with a toy gun was around the cemetery, and even though he analyzed him, he realized it was a toy gun, something that real life police don't always realize. And didn't do anything to him. Now, he was cloaked, too. I didn't really mention the cloak. He has one from, like, the Predator originally did, but I don't know, it just doesn't play as much of a role. At least, not what. Although, of course, it does help with the name Ghost. Also, to kind of lure Harrigan out and get his blood up, he targets his police colleagues, killing 2, I believe. And he was going to kill the female detective, Leona, but then noticed that she was pregnant. It was in the subway scene. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't quite get that scene. I mean, when I was a kid, I was probably, not quite a teenager, but close to it, 12, 13 when this came out. But I thought, maybe wrong back to Alien, he impregnated her. Because they do say when they're wheeling her out, she's pregnant. It's kind of left up. Of course, later we realized it's part of the Yautja honor code not to kill pregnant females. I thought they were alluding that maybe he impregnated her with a predator-human hybrid, because we see him lifting her up. Again, we didn't know. Predators are still new. I didn't know. Aliens fresh on the brain. What do you do? A little confusing to younger me. But he does go by the honor code, at least to the major extent. So he's not a bad blood, as they would call predator outlaws. But part of their code is not to let their technology fall into others' hands. He's hurt. Even though it's his first hunt, he's going to blow himself up. Well, Harrigan notices the smart disc stuck on a wall, grabs it, and just right through his wrist gauntlet. Ah! That's kind of one of the neat features of this figure. Now, some have criticized the fact that it's just a peg in this arm. And then it just kind of leaves a stub in here. It's okay. Could they have done a more intricate job, maybe with a replacement piece for each one so it really looks chopped off? Probably, but that would be 2 more pieces to tool up for a piece that they're basically recycling. I understand from a manufacturing point of view why they didn't. Plus, it looks fine sitting here. Plus, to be fair, the smart disc is super razor sharp, so it would make a very clean cut. For one thing, it disabled his self-destruct and computer systems, and kind of put him into shock, and he fell into an apartment, which was another scene that kind of confused me a little bit as a kid. That's where the Medicomp comes in. Obviously, he's got an open wound. He's lost half his arm. He's been shot by shotguns. He's lost his biomask. He's lost pretty much all his weapons except his claws and just, being a predator. He's not, he's had better days, let's just put it like that. But you know what? He wanted a challenging hunt with Harrigan, and he got one. He got what he wanted, so I don't know. Be careful what you wish for, Yautja. Boop. Like I said, one nice thing about him having less stuff is he's a little easier to pose. It's a little stiff on that joint. I could hit it with the hairdryer again. Now it's stiff too. Yeah, I'm only partially. I tend to go, like I said, kind of low and slow with these, just to be careful. But the part that kind of confused me was he falls into an old person's apartment. And there is where we see him using the Medicomp. Now, in reality, what he was doing, he crushed up parts of their wall and mirror, made a slurry, used the burner, and made a cauterizing treatment for his arm here. I wasn't really sure what was going on, though. I thought maybe he had stashed a kit or something in their wall there. I just wasn't really sure what was going on. Again, a little bit of a confusion. Before the internet, you couldn't just, Google what was happening in a film. Either way, he uses his Medicomp, much to his pain, as we see, but it does give him a shot, and that's where this mask comes from. He pulls it out of the kit. I think this is super neat. Little breathing mask. Whatever it's giving him, stimulant or air or what have you. Even has a nice little hose. Now, this hose doesn't plug in, but some people have made a little hole or whatever. If I have the combi stick on, I usually just kind of put it in there and put the combi stick over it. I've also noticed if you pull this peg for the combi stick out, it leaves a hole in the body. The hose can go right in. So you have options. But I think the reason they didn't do it was they didn't want people, mashing this up when they were swapping heads, because he does come with 2 heads. But I think the mask is just kind of super neat, frankly, myself. Of course, he still has the moving feet. Kind of articulate. Boop, boop, boop. And the reason maybe I thought that he had stuff stowed in this apartment was because the next scene, he's running down to the sewers after giving himself first aid, because Yautjas kind of need to do that. They're hunting alone. But he really wasn't hunting alone, but his party, his tribe, was not going to come to his defense. So the final scene takes place on the Yautja mothership. And here that is. Earlier I showed you the NECA Cinemachines Predator Scout ship from Predator 1. This is the mothership, or clan or tribe ship from Predator 2. Die-cast again. I couldn't find one in the US, but I actually found a really cool Australian seller who wanted, I think I said in that video, $30, that's what they wanted. And the shipping was very, very reasonable. And I was amazed how quick it got here. I didn't even think to check the tracking. It just showed up within like a week and a half. Very good for Australia. My only regret, they had 2. I wish I'd picked up another one for Fox, my cousin, who is kind of into this alien predator NECA thing with me. But it's pretty neat. It's almost like a Klingon Star Destroyer to me. Yeah, cool. It's a big ship. There's not a lot of info out there. We know it's kind of the home base, home port for Predator clans. Of course, this one's for the Lost Tribe. We'll look at it more, but I just thought off the top of my head I'd grab her, since that's kind of where our final battle takes place. Now, we had already seen it in the film a few times when he was doing trophies and kind of chilling and, taking a day off, because even Predators need a day off. I did actually take time and hit the joint here with the hairdryer again, but this one does not want to rotate. This one does. I'm not going to force it. It's not that urgent to me. But, your mileage may vary. Sometimes you just get a joint that's sticky. I'm sure if I heat it enough. If you're heating them for joints, that's great. Just heat them up and then move them a couple of times. Let them cool. If you're heating for, like, straightening out weapons, like say you get a bent combi stick, my advice, heat it up. Don't go too far. They start to kind of curl and droop. Straighten it out in your hands, and then maybe put it in a cool place. Refrigerator, or just on a windowsill if it's a winter, and just kind of let the cold set it. Just don't do it too much, and be mindful of the paint. And paint will rub on these, especially in the joints. That's just part of it. Anyway, the final battle. So Harrigan's hurt, of course. He's lost his shotgun. Predator's hurt, although he's healed up a bit. And we're down to this guy with his claws and one arm. And Harrigan stole his smart disc and is using it as a hand axe. And they're fighting in the foggy, humid, jungly interior of their ship, which makes sense because predators like the heat. Even then, even hurt, this young Yautja is basically winning. Harrigan's putting up a really good fight, but he gets Harrigan on the ground, and once again, his overconfidence, his cockiness, his sloppiness, he starts to gloat before delivering the killing blow, leaving himself open, and Harrigan reaches up and slashes him across the chest. Now, that would have been kind of a neat thing. I know in other NECAs, they've done interchangeable chest plates. If they had given you a completely cut open chest plate to pop in, but that would require a whole new body mold, and I get it. Neat ending, believable enough. I mean, this is a Predator film, so yeah. Take it as you will. The leg is really moving well. It's just that it doesn't want to rotate at the bicep. Oh well. And that's him. He's not quite dead yet. His chest is sliced open and he's already injured, so he's dying. Now, in the film, he dies. In the book, he's actually mortally wounded. In either case, this is when the whole Lost Tribe shows up. Now, if I were really dedicated to this, I'd bring them all down right now and put them all around and make a really cool diorama. But I've got things to do, and it'll take me more time to get them down and put them back up than it would for the 20-second gag. So, sorry for that. I will say, though, that in the book, Greyback kills him. Honorable death. In the movie, he dies. Greyback and the other 8 members come and they carry his body away. And thinking that he's about to get his ass handed to him again, Harrigan, Danny Glover, says, "Who's next?" with a neon green bloody smart disc in his hand, knowing he's about to die. I mean, Arnold's awesome, but that was a pretty neat scene to me as a kid. And, of course, the famous scene of Greyback giving him the 1715 revolver, or flintlock, not even revolver, single shot, which I understood as a kid, but we didn't know where that came from. It was just a total, hey, we're going to throw this in. I guess today we'd call it sequel baiting. Back then it was just like, oh, okay, kind of like the alien head. It wasn't really, it was just there for fun, because that's what these films were really for. Fun, I don't want to say mindless, but fun summer entertainment, which is actually, kind of why City Hunter came to the LA region. He died, but that's kind of what Predators like. His death was considered honorable by Yautja. He was given a state funeral or whatever. Even though it was his first hunt as a true-blooded warrior, he did kill quite a few. He added trophies to the clan, and maybe most importantly for Yautja, he found a respectable adversary. He wasn't just killing innocents or weaklings. He found someone quite strong, much like Jungle Hunter had done. So here we are with standard Ultimate City Hunter and Battle Damage City Hunter, and of course the Mothership again, which is kind of cool. I like ships. I like diecast too. Hard to complain about either of these. They did a really good job. There's a couple of things I guess Ultimate could have come with, but he comes with more than Jungle. He also has a blast effect that I didn't show you, but those don't do a whole lot for me. Like as I've said before, maybe they look cool, but when you can't see them, they kind of seem silly. I like Battle Damaged. I like that the arm comes off. You can kind of continue the story. But, yeah, I get it. He's a little bare-bones compared. But I also get that they were doing 10 figures, some of them with totally new tooling or lots of new stuff. Toy companies, especially like NECA, that don't produce in huge numbers, they have to save money. And let's be honest, these guys are over 8 inches tall. And I think originally they were around $26. When I got them, they were more like $30. But compare that to Star Wars Black Series, which were $20, now $25, and come with sometimes just one accessory. Not that I'm hating on Black Series, I just got some new ones, but it's not a bad dealio. I hear the paint's really good too. Sometimes I've jokingly thought about just getting the cloaked versions because, what does it matter to me? And they're usually cheaper. But, yeah, pretty happy with City Hunter here. What do you think? I should point out that Kevin Hall played the original Jungle Hunter, and he played the City Hunter, too. In universe, City Hunter is actually taller than Jungle, but in reality, since basically the same actor, same height. Funny enough, though, when the arm came off, a different stuntman, R.D. Smith, played him. Why Smith instead of Hall? Well, Smith was actually one-armed. Yeah, boys and girls, before CGI and computer stuff, usually the easiest way to do that kind of stuff was just find a one-armed man. The fugitive joke can be put in there. The Terminator 2 used the whole twins thing for duplicate scenes as well. Of course, today, neither of those would happen. You just have a computer. I get it. But yeah, credit to Hall, who is unfortunately no longer with us. and Smith for being the one-armed, battle-damaged, and then dead city hunter. We don't really know their names. The Yautja, very few we hear their actual Yautja names. We just have human names. They seem cool with it, so whatever. Of course, now that we've gone on a long time about City Hunter, next time we have to talk about the whole Lost Tribe. The other 9 members. What an interesting group. Both real world, talking about their costumes, including how they were stolen, and in universe, how City Hunter joined it, Greyback, who'd been to Earth before, started it, and kind of where the members ended up. So let me know what you think. I'm pretty darn happy with all this. It's given me something to do. It's a bit of a slow season in my regular day job work, so it's nice to keep the brain occupied. And again, props to the seller in Australia for the mothership. Everything about that transaction was just awesome, and I really like having both Predator vessels. So what's your favorite? Do you like jungle or city? Let me know in the comments. This is Misha, and maybe next time Fox will stop in and help me out do a video too. We'll catch you next time.